Hello and welcome to everybody on Cloud Fitness. So in today's video, we are going to talk about time travel in Snowflake. Now this is a very important feature in Snowflake where we can traverse back in time. It is useful for the multiple use case. So today we will see how we can implement time travel in Snowflake and what exactly does it mean. So without any further ado, we will directly head on to the video, and in the beginning we will go through some basic theory sessions, and after that we will move on to the hands-on as well. So when we talk about Snowflake time travel, as the word itself signifies, right, it means that you can access the data which has been worked on in the past, right? It simply means accessing historical data. So for example, I have a table, I have made changes to that particular table on day 1, and then again on day 2 I have updated that table, and then again on day 3 I have let's say deleted some records from that table. Then each of these 3 days is a snapshot, right? And Snowflake preserves this snapshot. Anytime in the point, you can go back from point 3, you can directly go to the point 2 and say, okay, I have done some deletes on day 3, I don't want those deletes, I want to go back to the data which I had 2 days back, right? So you can do that, and this is what exactly your Snowflake time travel is, right? Now it is a very powerful tool. Why? Because let's say you have accidentally dropped a table, right? You have truncated something, you have you have done a wrong update on the table, you have done a wrong delete on the table, right? Now in that case, you can always go back and restore the data of your table, because you can go back in the time, right? You can go back in the time and you can restore it to the point where you want to, right? Similarly, if you want to do a backup of the data from any point in time, that also you can do. Similarly, if you want to do any analysis on the data, right? So for example, what kind of updates have come up in the table, right? So for example, you can do a like a normal minus query, right? Let's say day 3, you just say select star from the table, at the snapshot of day 3 minus select star from the table at the snapshot of day 1. So it will give you the difference, right? So that kind of analysis you can do on the tables as well using this Snowflake time travel capability. So when you talk about this time travel, right, I am telling you, okay, you can go back in time, but how long you can go back in time, right? Now, how long you can go is defined by the data retention period, right? It is defined by something that is called as your data retention period by default. Okay, in fact, I should not talk about by default now. So essentially, maximum number of days you can store your data is 90 days. You can go back in time for a particular table, for a particular schema, for a particular database by 90 days, right? Not more than that. So essentially, when I say data retention period specifies the number of days for which historical data is preserved, right? So maximum it can go up to 90 days. So any time travel operations, select, create, clone, undrop, which we will do, right? No worries on that. We will see and we will do these operations. So these can be performed on the data set up to 90 days, not more than that. So when you talk about the standard retention period, so whenever you create a table, you do not specify anything in Snowflake and you just simply go ahead and create a table, like create table so and so schema, right? In that case, by default, the retention period is 1 day. It is by default enabled for all Snowflake accounts. It is 1 day. Right? For Snowflake standard edition, right? Again, the default period is 1 day. Minimum retention period can go up to 0 days, right? And for Snowflake enterprise edition, when you talk about Snowflake enterprise edition, then what happens is for all the permanent tables, permanent schemas, permanent tables, the retention period can be set from 0 to 90 days, because 90 days is the maximum that I have told you, right? It can go from 0 to 90 days for permanent database, permanent schemas, permanent tables. And this 90 days can be extended as well. You need to talk to the Snowflake team. It can be extended, but remember that now this is the the data that gets stored, right? So you have to pay storage charges as well. If additional storage charges, if you increase the time period from 90 days, and you can do that after talking to the Snowflake team. Now remember that even in the Snowflake Enterprise Edition, right, any kind of transient tables or temporary tables, right, their default retention period is 1 day, right? It can be set from 0 to 1 day, but not more than that. You cannot set the default retention period of transient or temporary tables in Snowflake Enterprise Edition for more than 1 day, right? So these are the few key points which you should remember, which you should know before proceeding on, right? Now similarly, remember that whenever you have to whenever you create a table, right, if you do not mention any time travel or kind of command, which I will show you, whenever you create a table and you do not set time travel for that particular table, then what happens is by default time travel is for 1 day, right? You can increase or decrease it. You can increase it up to 90 days and you can decrease it up to 0 days, but you cannot disable time travel. You do not have any such command and for disabling of time travel. What you can at max do is, if you want to disable time travel, you can simply say, okay, set data retention time equal to 0 days. We will see this how, right? And then if you are an account admin, you can also set minimum data retention time, right? What is this minimum data retention time? It means it is a kind of an account level property that this particular account should have minimum data retention time period of 1 day, right? So now what will happen is, even if someone from your team has designated a table with retention period of 0 days, it will not work, because it will go and take the maximum value from minimum data retention time in days with data retention time, right? It will take the maximum value out of the two. Now to reiterate the same thing, I'll tell you essentially what happens is, one data retention time period you can set while creating a storage account, while creating a database, while creating a schema, or while creating a table, and one you can specify at the account level. Right, at the account level you can specify minimum data retention time, right? At the account level, if you have specified minimum data retention time period equal to 1 day, and then in a table which you create, you define minimum data retention time period as 0 days, right? Then what happens is, maximum of the two will be taken into the considerations. So these are very small things, right? But you should definitely learn these when you are trying to work on Snowflake. No worries if you do not understand it as of now. Once we will do the demo, you will understand it. But this theory is very important to have concept build, right? Now whenever you're creating a table, right, let's say your database has a default retention period. Like let's say while creating the database, you have mentioned retention period. Let's say you have mentioned it 6 days, and while creating table you have not mentioned any data retention time. Then in that case, table will by default take it as 6 days, because it will take it from the database, right? Similar case goes for the schema. If in case you have not mentioned anything, then schema will take the default retention period of the database itself. And you can also change the existing data retention period for any table. Whatever you change will become active. So this is a little bit background on the data retention and the time travel part. And two more points over here to note is, whenever you drop a schema, right, inside the schema you might have tables. So schema, let's say, has retention period of 6 days, right, and your table has retention period of 10 days. inside that particular schema. But now if you drop the schema, then all the child tables retention period will also be removed. It will also take, by default, it will also consider the retention period of your child tables as 6 days only instead of 10, and it will delete the tables as well. Now similarly, whenever a database is dropped, right, the retention period for the child schemas or table, right, if it is explicitly set different from the database itself, then again it is not considered. So let's move on and actually see how we can work on this concept of time travel in the Snowflake itself, right? Now when you see on the screen right now the PPT that I am showing, right, the commands which you see right now, so these are the commands which we actually use to deal with time travel in Snowflake. So for example, whenever you say select star from my table, like table can be anything, your table name, select star from my table at timestamp, you just provide the timestamp, right? So this will give you the snapshot of the table at that particular timestamp. Similarly, if you say select star from my table at offset, right, then in this case it is going to give you offset. Essentially means, let's say 60 into 5, right, it essentially means, and you have a minus symbol as well, so it means that tell me what were the historical data present in my table 5 minutes ago, right? If I want to make it 1 minute ago, I can simply remove 5 from here. So this is the meaning of offset. And similarly, you can also make use of something called as statement. Select star from my table before statement. Now this statement is nothing but the query ID, right? Whatever was present in my table before this particular query ID was executed, give me that, right? And you can always have 2 keywords before as well as at will give you exactly at that particular condition whatever the snapshot of the data is present, and before will give you the snapshot of the data before that particular condition, right? So this is essentially your time travel and how you can query time travel. Now using your time travel, you can also clone a table. So for example, if you see at the bottom create table, right, this is the table name, clone. So if you want to clone a table, right, using a timestamp, so whatever data was present in my table at a particular timestamp, take this and create a new table. So you can always do that, and this is called as cloning, right? Now similarly, you can the same thing you can do with databases and schemas as well. Complete same thing you can do with the database and schema. So let's move on to the portal and see exactly how we can do this. As you can see, I am logged into my Snowflake portal. We have already been working on this portal and I have given you walkthrough of this portal in my previous videos. So you can actually see that I have this worksheet, right? I'll just simply click on this particular worksheet, which is time travel demo 1. So here we are going to see how essentially time travel works. So the very first thing that I'm going to create is, let me have my warehouse selected. Okay, so you can see the very first command that I have is create table demo table 01. So let me just execute this particular command. Right now you can see, or in fact let me zoom it as well. I think it will be easier for you to see. Okay, so now you can actually see that this is the table which is created, right? This is my table demo table 01, and I have created this table at this particular using this particular command, create table command, and I have not specified any time travel retention, nothing. Now by default what will happen is 1 day of retention will be there. I will show you how. Let me insert some values into it as well. So let me execute command number 3 as well, so that I have inserted some values into it, and let me copy the query ID from these 3 dots as well, because this is something that might be used later on by us. So let me just put in the query ID over here. Okay, so now we have created a table, and then what we have done, we have added some records in that table. Now if I use this describe table command, let me just simply use a describe table command which we use in most of the databases, like a pretty common command, describe table, right? Now you can see I have the name of the table, the kind of column I have, the details related to that particular column and the table. That's all. Now there are no other details mentioned over here, right, in the describe table command. Just wanted to show you that this describe table works like this. But if you want to understand and see the time travel period, then in that case you need to look for the show table commands. So now if you go ahead and if you run the show table command, right, show table like demo table 01. Now in this case you will see that when the table was created, right, what is the name of the table, what is the database name, it's test database, schema is the public schema, kind, it's a table, right, how many rows are there, 4 rows are there, because I have added 4 rows at the top, right? If you see, it has one column and I have added 4 rows on in it, right? So it has shown you that okay, it has 4 rows. What is the retention time? Now you can see the retention time is 1. If you do not specify, it gives retention time as 1, exactly what we discussed in the theory, right? And there are a little bit more details regarding your table which we will not talk about today. Now you can also get the details of this particular table using the information schema. Now this information schema is also pretty common because we do it in our traditional databases as well, right? Now let me check this particular name. Now you can actually see that right now there are no details present here for the demo table 01. We will come back to this. And we will talk about this information schema as well. Now let me try to show you the time travel feature. Now if you see, if I do a select count star from this particular table, I should get 4 rows, right? So you can see this is the count, right, that I have. Now let me try to do one thing. Let me try to insert few more records into my table. Now you can see that my query is running, and let me again copy my query ID. Right now, the moment I copied my query ID, let me just paste it over here. So this is the query ID that I have. Right now, I have created a table. Right, I have inserted a row into it. 4 rows I inserted. Then again I have inserted more rows into it. Right now, if you see, if I copy, now let me do a select count star on this particular table now, because now I have inserted more number of rows into it. Now you can see the count is 24, right? But now using time travel, what I can do is I can simply say select count star from the demo table 01 before statement. Right, before this statement, I'll just copy the statement ID. So what it essentially means is, before the statement is executed, what is the count, right? Give me that count. Now let me run this particular query and let us see the output. Now you can see that the count star is 20, which is correct. I'll tell you why. So essentially what happened is, the very first time what we did is we ran only 4 rows. We inserted only 4 rows, right? So and I copied the query ID. But after that I executed a set of commands over here, and the last command that I executed was this, right? And I copied the query ID of the last command, right? This is the when my last insert command was getting executed, that is the time when I copied the query ID from here. Right now, at this particular time, these 4 commands were already run, right? So 4 from the top, right, and 16 from here. So already 20 rows were present. So that is why you got 20 as the output over here. Now if I do add over here, right, at this particular statement, and then when I run this, right, now you can see the value is 24. So this was the status, this was a count at this particular condition. When this condition was executed, at that time there were 24 rows, and before that there were 20 rows. Right now, similarly, if I want to count a differential, right, differential as in if I want to count the difference, now the difference will come 4, right? So if I want to count the difference between this particular snapshot and this particular snapshot, right, I'll put it at right, at this particular snapshot and this snapshot is the current snapshot. So if you do simple count star from demo table 1, this will give you the current snapshot, and the first one will give you the before one as in, right, for example, if I execute this will give you 24 because this is the current count. Now, and when I execute this, now before my last statement was executed, the count was 20, so it will give you 20. So that is why I can actually do a minus as well, and I can analyze the data from here. So now after running this, you can actually see this is the differential. It actually tells you the difference between the two snapshot versions, right? Now similarly, if you want to get the snapshot via offset, which I explained you, right? If you want to see, okay, what was the count in my demo table, just 60 seconds back, right? Now if I run it, I'll probably get 24 only. But now if you see, if I put it, let's say star 6, what was, in fact star 6 will be too much, I think, let's say 2. Now it will tell me, what was the count in my table 2 minutes back. So let's see what was the count. Okay, 2 minutes back also it was 24. Now let us see 4 minutes back. How much was it? 24. Now let me check 5 minutes back. So now you can actually see that 5 minutes back my count was 4. Right, so the first statement I executed 5 minutes back, so 5 minutes back my count was essentially 4. So like this you can actually query the data with the offset as well, right? Similarly, you can go and query the data with the timestamp. You just need to put the timestamp over here, right? The day, date and the timestamp. Similarly, you can get the data by a timestamp as well. Now as we move forward, right, I can alter any table to change the retention period as well, right? So for example, this demo table 01, now if I want to change the data retention period, so we have already seen, like, let me just requery this using show tables. So if I do this requery, you can actually see that the retention time is 1. Right now if I want to change it, I can simply use alter table set data retention time in days equal to 3. Now the moment I run this, you will actually see the statement executed successfully. And now again, if I try to do show tables, now you will see that the data retention time period has actually changed to 3 over here. So this is how you can actually go ahead and change the data retention time period as well. Now similarly, let me do one more thing. I want to create a table with the data retention time period of 3 days. This is how I do it. Create or replace table name, whatever schema that you want to specify, and the data retention time in days equal to 3. So this is how you specify. If you do not specify, it will by default take as 1. And the other thing is, if you want to create transient or temporary table, you just need to specify this keyword over here. Right, this transient table, you need to specify if you want to create any transient or temporary table. So for now, let me just run this particular command. Now you can see that it starts giving you an error, invalid value 3 for parameter data retention time in days. What does it mean? That this value is invalid. Why this value is invalid? Because I told you that for transient and temporary table, the data retention time period can be maximum 1, not more than that. So if I run this command, now you can see that the moment I changed it to 1, it worked. And now let me do show tables. Now you will see that retention time is 1 over here. So if you do more than 1, right, over here, it is going to fail. Now similarly, let me run this for the temporary table as well. So you will see that for temporary table, when I have kept the data retention time in days equal to 6, it has executed. But if I do show table, right, demo table 03, if I do show table command on this, you will actually see that it does not take 6 days. Right, it will again take 1 day only, because although in case of temporary table it did not give you any error, but it does not mean that it actually took this particular value. It will always take it as 1 day. So remember that in case of transient or temporary table, it should be always 0 or 1 day. Right, now similarly, let's say you have kind of dropped a table, right, and you want to you want to get it back. So in that case, what you can do is you can go ahead and use undrop command. So right now what I have executed is show tables history, right? So it kind of gives me the history of all the tables that I have been working on, right? So demo table 01, 02, 03. So these are the ones which I have created right in front of you. So you can see that it shows kind of the table, because one table was transient, one was temporary, and one was the normal table, right? So you can actually see the number of rows as well, the bytes, right, if it has any data. I did not load any data into transient or temporary table. That is why rows and bytes is 0 over here, right? And you can actually see the retention period and dropped on. So these are actually not dropped. So that is why dropped on option is null. So this is how you can actually see the table history. Now let me do one thing. Let me just do a drop of demo table and run this. So now you can see the drop table has executed successfully. Now again I'll do a show history. Now in the show history, right, you can actually see this demo table 02, right, this transient table which I dropped. It will show you the dropped on. It will tell you at what time it was dropped, right? So this is a very powerful thing where you actually know which table was dropped, it was dropped when, and it was dropped by whom, because it also tells you, the owner, right? Now, so these are basically the drop commands. Also, let me do one more thing over here. Now I have dropped a demo table 02, right? Transient table I have dropped. Now what I'll do is I'll recreate one table, right? Create table demo 02, right? And I will insert the data 4 rows into that particular table, and now you can see that it got inserted. So I created the table. Let me drop this table again. Now again I dropped this particular table, right? And then let me again create this table without any data, and then again go back and let me show the history of this particular table. Now you will see I have done operation on the demo table 02 3 times. So that is why you can actually see 1, 2 and 3, right? These 3 times. First it was a temporary first it was, right now the current state of the table is not a temporary table. The very first time I created it as a temporary table, and then I dropped it, right, and then I recreated it as a normal table, right, and then again I dropped it and I recreated it. So essentially it tells you each and every step of this particular table. So demo table 02, right, you can actually see that this is the table, right, that got created recently, right? I did not add any rows into it because this is the create statement that I used, line number 64, right? This is what I used. But before this I actually inserted 4 rows into this table, right? Now to check that, you can actually see this demo table 02 over here, right? Again I created this table in middle. I inserted 4 rows into it, so it shows 4 rows over here, and then I dropped it as well. So that is why it shows you dropped on date. So remember, this is how you can actually recheck the history of your table. Similarly, if you want to alter the names, right, you can actually do that. So right now what I have done is alter table demo table 02, rename it to demo table 03. I have renamed it. Now let me show you the history again, right? So moment I did that, what essentially happened is the previous versions demo table 02 which were dropped, right, they remain the same, but only the latest table, right, only the latest current version, right, it got changed to 03, right? Now similarly, if you want to clone your table, let me copy my statement from the top, like statement ID. So this is my statement ID. Let me just copy this particular statement ID. Now if I go down over here, right, I have this command create table restored table, right, clone demo table 01 at this particular statements. Okay, so it essentially means that before the statement was executed, take the data from the demo table 01 before this particular statement was executed and create table restored table named as restored table from this table, right? Now if I do again show tables like restored table, you will actually see that this table got created. Right now this table has 20 rows as well. So I think you are very clear on this because we have just discussed 24 rows, right? So before this statement was executed, there were 20 rows. So along with 20 rows, this table has been created, right? Now similarly, whatever I have explained you here, right, in the time travel, everything can be done on the schemas. The same things can be done on the databases as well. So you can see this is related to schema. You can do show schemas history, show database history. So all the commands you can actually do it on the schema as well, right? And in fact everything we were working on the test database over here. So right now if you go to public tables over here, so all the tables that we created you can actually see over here as well, right? So essentially this is what I wanted to discuss in the time travel video and show you how time travel works. I hope you like the video. In case you have any questions, do let me know in the comment section. We can cover it in the upcoming videos as well. So thank you so much for being till here, and do remember to like, share and subscribe to my channel.